Well, Privit jak spravi. So, thank you. Thank you to the organizers. I've had a wonderful visit so far. Really very enjoyable, just excellent execution on everything. I really got to explore a little bit of Kiev. On Wednesday, I went into the old town and I saw the catacombs. So it was a privilege for me. My great-grandfather was Ukrainian, so my roots are all from here. So it's a really pleasure to be here. Okay, thank you. Let's get started. First off, let me tell you that all the slides, like all the other keynote speakers, I've made them available on SlideShare. So at the last slide, we'll show you the URL for that, okay, if you want the slides. All right, so let's talk about a sprint. Here, this guy is ready to rock his sprint. Yeah, you ever have that feeling when you begin a sprint? You've done your planning, you're ready to go, you know what you're going to do, all set, right? As you go through this sprint, maybe some things are getting a little tough, right? You have this experience, not sure you're going to make it, yeah? People have that experience out there? Oh my God, lots of hands, yes. Then, midway through the sprint, we don't like what's happening, getting a little worried. Almost towards the end, ooh, we're not going to make it. Let's drop testing and refactoring, because then we can go faster and get everything done. So we do that. Does that happen around? Any of you had that experience? Okay, wow, lots of hands. And then you get it all done. If it's finished, everyone says we finished the work that we promised, that we committed to, right? And maybe some of the developers start to feel bad because, wow, what did I just check in? Yeah, it kind of works. It's done, but it's pretty poor quality. And I don't feel too good either about what I did. I'm not proud of my work. You see any of that? As I travel around the industry, around clients of ours that are all around the world, I see stuff like this, okay? It concerns me a lot, right? Ron Jeffries, one of the signers of the Agile Manifesto, one of the earliest first Agile coaches, he said this about points or story points. I may have invented them. If I did, I'm sorry now. Jim Highsmith, another signer of the Agile Manifesto and the author of some great books, wrote "Velocity is killing agility." Right? Is that a surprise? Do any of you experience this with velocity, that it's kind of a crazy metric? You might think it's just part of Agile, but it isn't. It really isn't. Jeff Gothelf wrote the book Lean UX. Anyone familiar with this book, Lean UX? Okay, some of you. He said, let's get out of the deliverables business, right? We don't want to be, on treadmill producing feature after feature after feature as the criteria for success. Because maybe all the things we're churning out aren't necessarily producing the outcomes we want. Let's get out of this business of just trying to deliver and being proud of our delivery cycle. And what about the definition of done? So many places I go, the definition of done is this inwardly focused thing where no one's asking the users, hey, are you happy with what we delivered? Do you use what we delivered? Is it making you better? The definition of done is just someone internal to the organization saying, yeah, I accept it. Now, this is the biggest quote I have in the whole deck, so I apologize for this one, but this is the problem that many speakers have pointed out. Many industry leaders in the field who aren't based out of the Scrum world have said over and over and over again, this product owner role is really bad. This single wringable neck is a terrible idea. I've seen it in large organizations that have very complex systems where there is no possible way that a single person can play this role very well. It is a disaster. And it is being taught. What was it, 450,000 people have just gone through a class where they learned about this crap? Give me a fucking break. We got to get rid of the product owner role. We just got to absolutely get rid of it. It should be a community of people who are chartered to make good decisions. That community can be a cross-functional team. It can involve an architect, subject matter experts, sales and marketing people, operations folks, all of the people whose intelligence collectively can help you figure out what do we build, not one person. Agile, the definition of agile. Is this the definition of agile that we want? Marked by ready ability to sprint, estimate with story points, and conduct stand-up meetings? This is nonsense. This is not what agility is about. Okay? So we have to reset. We have to get away from these old-fashioned rituals and move towards genuine agility. And that's what I'm here to talk about today. Okay, so who am I? This is who I am. I've recently become totally and utterly enamored of Snapchat. So it's the biggest logo thing up there. It is an incredible communication tool, by the way. It's not just for teenagers. You really should check it out. It is an absolutely incredible communication tool. And I am using it now to communicate about a lot of the ideas like this modern agile stuff. So friend me on Snapchat. I'm active on Twitter. I write a blog, so it's up there. And I barely ever look at LinkedIn. So you're welcome to connect with me there, but I don't go there much. All right, a couple more things about me. I wrote a book called Refactoring to Patterns. I speak at a lot of conferences around the world. I've created a whole bunch of e-learning after I wrote my book to help people actually learn these skills. And I run a company of about 30 plus people internationally. We help folks around the world actually learn genuine agility. We're likely the oldest agile consultancy on the planet. We've been doing this since about 1998. These are some of the customers we work with. There's many others. I just chose a few here, and part of my stories today are going to be related to these companies. So in the dictionary, agile is defined this way: marked by ready ability to move with quick, easy grace. Right? Move with quick, easy grace. That's the dictionary definition of agile. Having a quick, resourceful, and adaptable character. And I should point out, if you're moving with quick, easy grace, you're usually going somewhere, too. You know where you're going, and you're doing it with quick, easy grace. There's a destination in mind. Now, the manifesto for Agile software development, which probably many of you are familiar with, basically said we're uncovering better ways of developing software by doing it and helping others do it. What I'm going to talk about today continues that tradition. Okay? We're simply uncovering better and better ways to be agile. Okay? So this is completely consistent with the manifesto. I would say modern agile is uncovering better ways of getting awesome results. It's a little more accurate to what I'm after. And it's not just related to software. I've been applying modern agile to book writing. I've been applying it to some legal work I'm doing. It's a very adaptable little thing. All right, so what we're saying with modern agile is results over rituals. Let's get out of the rituals business. Now, this is a push bike. I love this thing. It's just so utterly simple. Right? Look how few moving parts there are. The reason I bring this up is a lot of people say to me, now Josh, you've been doing this agile stuff since like the late 90s. And here you are talking about modern agile. But you know what? The rest of us are new to this. And we can't do your modern agile thing. We gotta start with training wheels. We got to start with like the old-fashioned stuff that's from the 1990s. We got to start with XP, we got to start with Scrum, because they're training wheels. Well, there's a thing that's interesting about training wheels these days. Training wheels are going away. Parents of kids like myself are no longer using training wheels. Our kids are learning to ride bikes with push bikes. Or in the case of my daughter, with a bike that has pedals, and I told her, don't use the pedals. Learn balance. Okay? The first thing is to learn balance. If you can learn balance, it'll be easy to start pedaling and riding the bike. Why do I bring this up? Because I believe that the modern approaches that are out there now, the modern Agile approaches, are perfectly right for you to start with. Just like the push bike is perfectly right for kids to start with, you don't have to begin and don't have to experience the pains of something like training wheels, right? That horrible fear when you take the training wheels off and you really don't know how to balance because you're used to just biking, but you're not really biking. Or in the case of some of these old processes, you're not really Agile, only superficially. Let's see what this looks like. This is my daughter. That's our dog. Just notice right there for a minute. Do you see something off there in the distance? This poor guy was trying to get his daughter to learn how to ride. And he had all the tools and he had the training wheels and she was miserable and he's had to be holding her the whole time. And I said to him at some point, you know, you could use our bike because the seat was very low and Eva was learning, as you're about to see. And he was like, oh, no, I'm fine. So I felt a little bad for him. Now, we did at some point take a break and we came back in the morning, so you're about to see. So you got the general idea. She learned how to bike in 24 hours, basically. And I am the kind of person who's always going to be looking for better and better and faster ways to help people become Agile. So for me, the old stuff that I found problems with, and when I say problems, you know, we can help a client learn some Agile things, but we'll check in with that client 2 or 3 years later and see, so what's stuck? What are you still doing that's working for you? And what did we teach you that you just abandoned or never really worked out for you? We do this. And so we figure out over time, you know, what's really working out there in the industry and what isn't. We also experiment our brains out. We're constantly experimenting just to see how could we get better, right? How could we simplify the Agile process? How could we get better results by simplifying, by doing less? We also read a lot. And so these are some books that have come out in the last 10 years or so that have heavily influenced where modern Agile is. Okay? Badass a book by Kathy Sierra. We'll see her later in the presentation. Badass, Making Users Awesome. Kathy is one of the most incredible people in the entire software field. Another book by the CEO of Zappos. Zappos, the big famous shoe company that was acquired by Amazon for $1 billion. Delivering Happiness. That's the name of that book. An incredible book, right? Books like this heavily influence modern Agile. Around safety, lots of books around safety. I've been heavily influenced by these books since about 2012 when I came upon this book called The Power of Habit, and I read the story of Paul O'Neill. You're also going to learn about Paul O'Neill a little bit later. That book blew my mind, okay? The safety story of Paul O'Neill. And recently, the same author wrote this book, Smarter, Faster, Better, which I highly encourage you to read. To me, it's a modern classic and just came out about a month ago. Pre-Accident Investigations, Drift into Failure by Sidney Dekker. Lots of books about safety in other industries that we can apply to the software industry that can help us be a lot better. Of course, around experimentation, you can't ever miss the Lean Startup. I think a lot of people have been reading this over the years. I've seen it in lots of presentations. A very important book. I mentioned Lean UX already. And then there's the Startup Owner's Manual, which is written by Steve Blank and his colleague, Bob Dorff. That book is incredible. It really gets into the whole concept of customer development. There's product development, and then there's customer development. Customer development is really getting to understand your customer, so you build the right thing. Then up here in delivery, books like Continuous Delivery, Kanban, the continuous flow of value, and there's a whole bunch of stuff that's not in book form yet on continuous deployment. So books like this have heavily influenced the direction of the Agile movement and of modern Agile implementations, okay? So this is what I now think of as modern Agile. These 4 things, all right? And I did bring a bunch of these stickers. So if you want a sticker after the talk, please come up and get one. I don't know that I have enough for everybody, but I'll do my best. If not, I have some other surprises for you. So this is modern Agile. I try to simplify it as much as possible. Make people awesome. That's a major focus of what we're trying to do. Now, I'm going to explain each one of these in depth. Make safety a prerequisite. Extremely important part of being excellent. Experiment and learn rapidly. And finally, deliver value continuously. There are things you can do where the activity is hitting on all 4 of those things. And that's why modern Agile's in the middle. Now, this is my brother. His name is actually Dmitry. My father liked the name Dmitry because it kind of goes with Kerievsky. This is one of the happiest days of his life, I think, because he was in the Caribbean and he got to ride the dolphins. And he also was lucky because he was like the last person to go. So a long line of people, and he got to observe them all trying it, and so he kind of figured out what to do. So I've since been referring to this as double dolphin agility, which is where we're kind of balancing the managerial planning stuff, people stuff, with the technical stuff. Because that's what we found to be most successful in the field of software development. Having that balance. Just like Eva had the balance and learned that balance early to learn how to ride a bike, you need this balance. Without it, you're not going to get the greatest results. All right, let's get into make safety a prerequisite. What does this mean? What does it mean to make safety a prerequisite? A prerequisite means something we do before we do other things, right? We do it before. Paul O'Neill is a fascinating guy. He actually started out involved in software for the Veterans Administration in the US. And he worked for various companies, got involved in Washington a little bit early on in his career in politics, ended up on the board of directors of Alcoa, and eventually in 1987 they asked him to be the CEO of Alcoa. Alcoa, the aluminum company of America, which is not the greatest name because it's a global company producing aluminum. The aluminum in this MacBook Pro is from Alcoa. The aluminum on lots of airplanes is from Alcoa. The aluminum in a lot of automobiles, trucks, is from Alcoa. It's an incredible company, but it started out in 1887 inventing aluminum smelting. And soon, a couple of decades later, it was a monopoly in aluminum. It was the monopoly. So much so that the US government broke them up because, the government breaks up monopolies. And so as the decades passed, they faced their challenges. They had issues with competitors. They had issues with quality. They had issues with a lack of innovation over the many decades. They weren't innovating enough. They had problems with unions, right? People that unionize and basically work with management to hack out agreements. Lots of problems. So by 1987, 100 years later, they were in trouble. And so they finally said, okay, we've never done this in our 100-year history. We're going to bring in an outsider. We're going to bring in Paul O'Neill. He's never been really an Alcoan. He's been on our board, but he's not an Alcoan. And Paul did something strange. He went to Wall Street for the opening meeting and said, I intend to make Alcoa the safest place on the planet. I'm going to go for zero injuries. I'm going to go for worker safety. Now, Wall Street analysts, the people that follow the advise on stocks, they ran out of the room and said to their customers, sell the Alcoa stock right now because there's a crazy man at the helm who's talking about worker safety. This is nuts. No one talks about worker safety. CEOs don't talk about that. They talk about profits. They talk about not paying taxes. He's crazy. Well, okay, let's look at his results. So basically, total recordables are injuries, right? And lost work days are, of course, days when you can't come to work because you're too injured to come to work. The data we have is from 1987 to about 2011. And basically, it looks like this. So during the 13 years that Paul O'Neill was there was a steady decrease in recordables and in lost work days. It just kept going down and down and down. He was serious about safety. It wasn't just an idea he had at the beginning of his tenure. He was totally serious about it. Now, what do you think happened? Because in 2000, he left to become the Treasury Secretary of the United States of America. What happened after he left? Any ideas? It goes up. How many think it goes up after he left? Show of hands. How many think it went down after he left? Okay, more of you think it went down. I don't know the answer. No, I do know the answer. He leaves and it continues to go down. How's that possible? He took a 100-year-old company and he transformed its DNA. He transformed it so well that when he left, it continued, right? The culture had been radically changed. And it wasn't just based on him being there anymore. It was a change that really was present in every worker in Alcoa. Okay, if you worked at Alcoa back then, you learned that if you found anything in the plant, the aluminum plant, that was unsafe, you were empowered to make it safe. And if your team or your manager wouldn't allow it or had some problem, Paul O'Neill gave you his phone number and said, call me. Call me at home if there's a problem. One day, a worker did call him. There was 3 conveyor belts, right? A conveyor belt is conveying stuff on it, and the middle one was broken. So the manager said to them, okay, well, you're all going to carry the stuff from conveyor belt 1 to conveyor belt 3. And this worker said, no, I'm going to hurt my back. I don't want to do that. The manager said, tough luck. We got to keep the schedule going. So the worker called Paul O'Neill. It's 10 p.m. For Paul, and I said, Paul, Mr. O'Neill, this is happening. Paul said, thank you for calling me, and he called the plant manager, the director of the plant, and basically got him to stop having the workers do this. got them to fix the conveyor belt, and by like 2 a.m., the conveyor belt was working again, everything was fine. Stories like that spread across Alcoa. That Paul O'Neill meant business. Paul O'Neill had your back. Workers started to put pictures of him in their lockers. Big deal. More data for you there. Revenue-wise, what happened? Well, an incredible Wall Street story. I mean, incredible story of any company. It just kept going up and up and up. Of course, there's little dips. There are recessions and challenges in any business. But this is a phenomenal achievement. It's absolutely phenomenal what he did. Okay? So it turns out taking care of people actually helps with the bottom line. It's very profitable. Now, let's move on. Etsy. You all know Etsy? It's a crafts, arts and crafts kind of marketplace that's global, and they do really well. They're based out of Brooklyn. I visited their offices. They had a site outage. They hired a programmer, and that programmer's 7th day on the job, they deleted the CSS file, pushed it to production, because they do continuous delivery. It brought the whole site down. It was a missing CSS file. There was another page that relied on it. Couldn't bring up the page, tried to show the error page. The error page also relied on the same CSS file. Infinite loop, memory gone, and site goes down. Person's 7th day on the job. What do you think happened to them? Some say, how many say they were fired? How many say they're not fired? Okay, promoted. How many say they were retrained? They had to go through some training. Okay, some of you. How many say they were given an award? A couple. Oh, but you guys were in my workshop, so no. No, maybe not. All right, so we don't know what happened in this situation, right? Normally, this is what happens. This is the normal state of affairs. The site is down. Lots of money is being lost, right? Because no one can actually sell. It's a big deal. Seth Godin is a popular author on all kinds of business subjects. He's a brilliant guy. And he said people aren't afraid of failure. They're afraid of blame. They don't want to be blamed, right? Stephen Perry talked about this earlier today. The importance of having a blameless culture. This guy, the 7th day on the job, won the 3-arm sweater award. Right? A 3-arm sweater. If a craftsperson's knitting a sweater and accidentally knits a 3rd arm, it's kind of funny. And they win this award for the most spectacular mistake, which actually helps Etsy get better. Etsy said, shame on us for producing an architecture that could crash the whole site just because one file is missing. Boy, thank you for revealing this to us. They practice blameless retrospectives at Etsy. When you do a retrospective, it's really clear that the way they do them is it's blameless. We're not seeking blame here. We're just trying to learn. And they basically train people in how to be blameless and how to have a blameless culture. It's a phenomenal thing. Now, what do you observe about these faces here? Are they communicating very much, or are they just sort of, they're not, right? There's lots of thoughts happening probably in their heads, but we don't know what they're saying. They're not really contributing, and someone's droning on about something boring or something like that. This is a quote from a paper that I recently read. Futility more than fear is why employees choose not to speak up to their bosses. Futility. There's no point. I could say something, but nothing's going to happen. So why should I say anything? Ever any of you experienced that? Yeah? You start to feel like there's just no point. That's not a safe place to work. That's not a climate, as Stephen said, that you want to work in. You need to improve that. Amy Edmondson is a Harvard business professor and has been studying teams and teaming. She wrote a book called Teaming, and she's done some remarkable work in studying psychological safety in teams. Okay? It's been very, very influential. And she said that we basically are image managers. We manage our image. We manage what people think of us. We manage how people perceive us. So we don't want to expose anything that would threaten the image others hold of us. We don't maybe want to ask a question that would reveal that we're ignorant. Or we don't want to disagree with someone important because that might threaten their image of us. A lot of that comes out in this sort of dysfunction. But it helps be aware of it. Now, Project Aristotle is a project at Google that spanned over 2 years, where they wanted to study. They study everything at Google, right? They even take statistics on like the different beverages that people consume during the day. They literally do that. I mean, it's as metrics driven as you could possibly imagine. So they wanted to study what makes for the best teams at Google. And by the way, we've worked with Google for, I don't know, 8 or 9 years. Long time working with them. They wanted to study these teams to say what makes for a high-performance team. Is it a team that they work together and then they go and they play together? Is that what makes for a great team? Well, it turns out no, because there's this other team over there that's really high-performing, and none of them associate with each other after work. Okay, is it a team that stays focused during meetings and you know, stays on the agenda, doesn't like wander off the topic and come back and wander and come? No, that's not it either. They kept searching and interviewing and researching for 2 years, looking for a pattern, looking for something that they could point to say, when this is present, you have high performance. And what they discovered was psychological safety. This is very much in line with what Stephen Perry was talking about earlier today. Psychological safety means that team members feel safe to take risks and are vulnerable in front of each other. That's how they defined it. You can also look at it as just the ability to be yourself, the ability to not be afraid to speak up, the ability to contribute and contribute equally with others. Lots of things that lead to this psychological safety. But when they found that it was present, big things changed. So they started sharing the data with the Googlers. Without telling them what to do, they just said, look, this is the data. Are you interested in like learning more about maybe how to do this? And people were. So they started sharing a few checklists and things like that to help folks. Turned out a lot of teams barely knew each other. They worked together, but they didn't even know much about each other. One manager on one team, he had stage 4 cancer, and no one on his team knew it. And when they did an offsite and he revealed that, others came forward and revealed their challenges in life. And all of a sudden, they were a closer-knit team. And they could share more with each other and collaborate better. Fascinating discovery. Psychological safety was far and away the most important of the 5 dynamics we found. It's the underpinning of the other 4. And the article is easily found if you just search for Project Aristotle at Google. You'll find the whole article about it. This guy is the chief of analytics engineering, and he said his entire behavior changed, especially around meetings after the psychological safety discovery. Okay? He's much more conscious of listening, modeling good listening, which means listening to someone and repeating back what you heard, not interrupting, of course, and encouraging everyone to speak. This has influenced me in my own company. After reading this study, things have changed in my own company. Okay? And this is what I've boiled it down to, and I've adapted this from this book, but it's not very well spelled out, and Google's not really sharing their checklists, so I put this together to help you, help me, help everyone sort of have these safer meetings, safer communications with each other. First one is encourage everyone to contribute. Now in my company, I actually have some like incredible agile rock stars. They are some really brilliant people, and they can talk. And they can talk, you know, right through a whole meeting and not sometimes be aware that, you know, they're taking too much of the stage. So since we've been practicing this, it's been a lot better. We've had others be able to contribute. We've consciously made an effort to say, you know what, we haven't heard from Brian. Let's hear from Brian. And Brian said to me, thank you, Josh. In fact, I was trying to get into the conversation, but I couldn't. So thank you for giving me the microphone or the stage. Really important, if you want to get collective intelligence at work, you got to get everybody contributing. But if someone's having a bad day and doesn't want to contribute, that's fine too. At least invite them. Okay, encourage everyone. Listen to each other. Really listen to each other. Okay? One of the ways you really listen is by reviewing or repeating people's points, right? If you say something and later on in the conversation I repeat back what you said, or I summarize it, or I paraphrase it, you're going to feel heard. And they model this at Google, and we've been modeling this in industrial logic, and you can do this too. Finally, avoid dominating, of course. Don't dominate the discussion or interrupt people, right? Try to avoid that. I think you can't avoid it always. If someone is dominating, you have to interrupt them maybe, right? So watch out for that. And finally, the most important of all, I think, is, and this is sort of three things that I've kind of collapsed into one, to be caring, curious, and non-judgmental, right? Sometimes someone can come to work, they didn't sleep well, there's some problem in their life, and they're not acting too nice. You can be very judgmental, or you can be more curious and kind and ask questions about what might be going on with them, right? And that tends to lead to better results. So those are some ideas for you that you could take away from this talk and start using right away. This is the Stop Work Authority card. I was inspired. I've been going to like safety workshops where I'm the only software person present. There are people from manufacturing, from energy, from all kinds of other industries where they have to take this kind of safety culture training. And I've been going and learning stuff. And one thing I learned is that they all carry around these cards. They're Stop Work Authority cards. It's like the Andan cord at Toyota. If you want to stop the line at Toyota, there's a cord. Boom, you pull it. We don't really have this in knowledge work, right? So we made these cards, the Stop Work Authority cards, to say you will never be penalized for stopping unsafe work or speaking up about hazards and injuries. And I've had this card flashed on me, and I've flashed the card to others in my company, and it's empowered everyone to make us safer. So you can create cards like this in your own shop, okay? Tailboarding, another idea I learned from other fields outside of software. Tailboarding is when, let's say some crew is outside on the street and they're going to change some electrical outlets or some electrical, machinery of some sort that's complicated and dangerous. Well, when they go to that site, they spend about 10, 20 minutes huddling and thinking about, looking around, trying to understand what are the possible risks of this work that they're about to go do. And how could they mitigate those risks? How could they work safely? We started doing this in our Kanban board, right? We'd say, before we start doing any work on something, it's got to go through tailboarding. Let's huddle and talk about what are the possible dangers, right? For example, you're about to do something that's very specific to your web page, and then you have to think about what's Internet Explorer going to do, right? Something like that, where it's potentially going to break because it's so incompatible. Tailboarding, a chance for us to do some safety work before moving on. Make safety a prerequisite. My friend Woody Zuhl pioneered this kind of mob programming concept. I think people were doing it, but Woody has really taken this up and leads this effort, mob programming. Anyone ever heard of mob programming? Yeah? So it's when a team gathers around a projector and works together on the code. There's a navigator, there's various drivers. And the drivers help the navigator in terms of what to type and what to do. And every 15 minutes, they change who's navigating, and it just keeps going like that for however long you want. They do it at Hunter Industries all day long. They work this way all day long. They've been having phenomenal results. They've just quadrupled in size. Their team has quadrupled in size. They're very, very effective. And they've been able to abandon a lot of old traditional agile processes or practices because of this. Let me ask you a question. If you're mobbing all day long with your team, do you need to do a stand-up meeting? No. In fact, a lot of things just start dropping away, right? So when we talk about modern agile, there's many ways to do modern agile, many ways to be more modern. These guys are doing the mob programming. You know what? At Industrial Logic, we said we should try this. And we're experimenting and learning based upon what they're doing down in San Diego, California. We said, let's try it. So we've been doing it with our distributed teams for about 3 hours a day, having some very good results with it. Worth trying. Job safety analysis, or JSAs. Another thing I've learned in the safety industry is that in complex or hazardous industries, they actually produce job safety analysis documents about different kinds of jobs. So when you're about to go do that kind of job, you have some sort of, deeply well thought out analysis of how to work safely on that job. We've been doing this because there are things in my company that we do which are inherently unsafe. And so the JSAs, as we call them, the job safety analysis documents, help us brainstorm around how can we work safer and safer and safer. Very, very valuable. All right, make people awesome. This is extremely important. So Agile really never really had a great direction in terms of what are we trying to achieve. It was more about how can we work in an agile way, work quickly, be adaptable, but there wasn't as much why. Why are we doing it, right? Back around 2004, I started introducing chartering into my agile projects. Chartering said, what are we going to do? Why are we doing what we're doing? And what would success look like? And since then, we've seen all kinds of things come around, like lean startups, where you're trying to be really clear, what is the goal? Now, Kathy Sierra says, make users awesome is the goal. I've expanded that to people, because I think you need to make your coworkers awesome. You need to think about how to make your stakeholders awesome. You need to think about how to make the person buying your software awesome, the person using your software awesome. It's an ecosystem. So it's make people awesome. In my car, when I'm parking, this modern Marvel thing, it starts beeping and showing me colors while I'm parking to help me not bump into things. I can't live without this anymore. I absolutely love this feature, right? I didn't even ask for it. It's just, I traded in my car and got a new one and had this wonderful safety feature. Now it's fantastic. I can fit into all kinds of tight parking spots because this gives me so much information. It keeps me safe, but ultimately it makes me awesome at parking. And it makes me much, happier about that. So how do you become awesome? The Japanese, after World War II, were in a difficult spot, of course, right? And they had to rebuild the country. And so in 1955, the head of the Japanese railway said, we got a problem here. We're never going to really rebound. Our economy's not going to rebound if we don't have a faster transportation system within our country. We got people strung out across 320 miles from Osaka to Tokyo, and we're moving raw materials and we're moving people around, and we're doing it really, really, really slowly because we have this ancient railroad system. So he said to the railroad engineers, I would like you to make a high-speed rail for us. And the engineers went back and started working on it and came back to him and said, okay, we've done some stuff, we've done some work, we think we can get a train that will go 60 miles per hour. And he said, no good, not good enough. We can't really rebound and we can't grow our economy with a train moving that slowly. So go back to the drawing boards. So they did, and they came back and said, okay, we think with some this and modifications and with tests we've done, we've built something that we believe will go about 70 to 75 miles per hour. And he completely rejected it. He said, I want it to go 120 miles per hour. And they're like, that's insane, that's crazy. And he said, yeah, well, you know what, it's not. And they're like, no, if you're going around a curve, it's just going to derail at that speed. And he said, well, why is there a curve? Well, we got all these mountains and things like, well, why can't we tunnel through and have a straight one? Now, he didn't come up with all the ideas, but what happened over the next several years was these Japanese engineers tried things, experimented, worked really hard, and ultimately, they, in 1964, had the Tokaido Shinkansen, the first bullet train, leave out of Tokyo, going 120 miles per hour. When we say make people awesome, one of the problems we see is that incrementalism doesn't necessarily get you to awesome. Jack Welch was the CEO of General Electric, and he came to Japan in the 1990s, the early 1990s. He came to visit a medical group, a medical equipment group, but he heard this story about the railway system. And he said, I want to learn more, and so he learned more, and he was absolutely flawed. He was absolutely floored. His mind was blown. He's like, they were given this insanely hard goal that was so outrageous. Sometimes it's called like a moonshot. And they achieved it. They had to rethink the entire approach to railways. They had to rethink everything about running a railroad. And they did. And so he came back to GE with this concept now that we got to have big, hairy, audacious goals. BHAGs. We got to have these giant stretch goals. And so, for example, the GE jet engines, these engines, these things are 5 tons. There's 10,000 parts in them. They're really hard to make and really complicated. And they have defects. These aren't defects that would affect flight, but they're defects like cables that are sort of out of alignment or scratches on things that could potentially cause issues, things like that. So the division managers, basically said, okay, Jack, we're going to do your big, hairy, audacious goal. We're going to reduce defects by 25%. And the fact was, those division managers later said that they kind of figured out that they could do it. Well, that's not a big, hairy, audacious goal. Big, hairy, audacious goal, you have no bloody clue how you're going to achieve it. So Jack Welch said, no, we need more bullet train thinking. How about 70% reduction in defects? So they went back and they tried to do this. And what they realized was they had to completely rethink how they approach the manufacturing of jet engines, how they approach hiring, how they approach training people, how they approach the design. They had to thoroughly rethink the entire process. They got it reduced by 75% within those 3 years. 75% reduction in defects. Absolutely incredible, absolutely awesome. How awesome do you think they feel doing that? So Kathy Sierra, who wrote this book, Badass, Making Users Awesome, said, don't just make a better X, make a better user of X. The total focus of her book about making the user awesome. You're not trying to make an awesome organization or an awesome product. You're trying to make an awesome user. My friend just did her taxes the other day. She uses TurboTax. She doesn't have an accountant for taxes. She just uses TurboTax. And TurboTax does such an incredible job that when she shows it occasionally to an accountant, they're like, yeah, it's all right. It's correct. There's nothing more I would add. It's doing a phenomenal job for her, right? She's an awesome tax preparer because of this tool. This is what we're trying to achieve. We're trying to make people awesome with our software, right? Now, when we're trying to do that, we need to think about the ecosystem, right? I've sold large amounts of software that we've built to companies where I didn't necessarily target all of the people in the ecosystem. I didn't think that much about the evaluators, for example, or that much about the buyer. I was thinking a lot about the user. But over time I've learned I got to think about the whole ecosystem, everyone involved. And also have to think about my coworkers and how do I make an awesome company environment for them. The done style for modern Agile is much more about validating with users that you helped make them awesome. It's not the product owner saying, yes, you did it, very good, done. It's the users saying, I like this feature. It's helping me be a better X. It's helping me be more awesome. That's the modern Agile definition of done. I love Slack. We use Slack all the time. One of the reasons I love Slack is they send me refunds. They send me emails saying, oh, these people didn't use Slack much this month, so here's a refund for $19.24. How does that make me feel? It makes me feel like Slack has my back, right? That they're not spending my money needlessly. I don't know any other company that does this, right? They just want to collect as much money as they can. But I start to have a bad feeling about software that I'm not really using, but I'm paying a lot for. So they make me feel protected. They make me feel more awesome. Aside from it being a phenomenal product, it's even more wonderful to me because of this protection that they have. Now this guy here, Massimo Bottura. Massimo is a 3-star Michelin chef. That's an incredible achievement on its own right. Massimo runs a wonderful restaurant in Modena, Italy. And something happened one day. They were making their lemon tarts. And this is a Japanese sous chef who works for Massimo. He's a brilliant guy and an incredible sous chef, but he made a mistake. He accidentally dropped one of the lemon tarts, and it shattered. And they were about to serve it to some special guests. What do you think happened? What's that? Yes, everyone got a little piece of the lemon tart. Not exactly, no. What was Massimo's reaction? He might have been shocked, but what did he do? One thing he could have done is saying, in the future we have to have a safer place for making lemon tarts so that you can't possibly drop it, right? We could focus on the safety of the lemon tart making. Or we could say, well, we're going to give you another kind of dessert tonight. The lemon tart just didn't work out. Instead, Massimo, the brilliant Michelin 3-star chef, said, wait a minute, and he took the other tarts and he broke them as well. And he renamed the dessert right then and there to, oops, I dropped the lemon tart. And he made an iconic dish that the restaurant is now known for internationally. Oops, I dropped the lemon tart. They even now made a dish. The dish itself looks like it's been dropped. And this is something people come to the restaurant to have. Okay? This guy is taking a mistake and turning it into art. So how do you think his sous chef feels having made this awful mistake? He feels amazing, right? He works in the most incredible place in the world. Because even mistakes can help us learn, how to be even better. That's incredible. That's awesome. Making your coworkers awesome. Making your restaurant more awesome. One thing we've learned too is that recognizing people, very, very important. People are doing great things all the time in the organization, whether it's flying across the world somewhere or working really hard on some invoicing or whatever. We are recognizing them all the time now. Regular recognition, sincere recognition. And there's tools and software that you can use to give these tokens of appreciation. We call it do props, giving them props. Experiment and learn rapidly. I love Zappos. Zappos started selling shoes by taking photos of shoes at a local shoe stop, throwing them on a web page, and seeing if anyone would buy them. Right? They literally did that. That was their MVP, their minimum viable product. Some photos of shoes. Turns out some people wanted to buy them, so they went down to the shoe shop, bought the shoes, sent them on, and kept doing the next experiment and the next experiment. This is a nice, frugal way, right? An inexpensive way to grow a business, which they did, right? By experimenting and learning rapidly. We did this in our e-learning. I was inspired by the CEO of Intuit. He said, when people are using TurboTax, we built a feature that lets them chat. So if they're all in the same step on their taxes, and there's a bunch of people online all together, they can have a spontaneous chat. They can chat with each other and help each other. I said, ooh, we should try that. Let's build it. You know, we do test-driven development and refactoring and continuous integration, and we could build it. But we said, no, wait a minute. Let's not build it. Let's fake it. And so we put this message up here on every web page of our e-learning. It said it was a total lie, and we hacked it into the template. 16 users from 4 countries are online right now. Join the chat. And we said, we want like 100 people to see this, and then we'll take it down, because we don't want to annoy people. Well, 100 people clicked on it, and when they clicked on it, they got this survey, okay? The survey basically said, oh, the feature's not done, but how interested are you in this feature? And they said unlikely, neutral, or likely. And you could opt out. You could just X. I didn't want to force them into, you know, the survey. And out of that, basically, so out of 100 people, 22 of them clicked on it. 22 of them clicked to join the chat. Out of the 22, only, 14 took the survey. And out of that, only 6 said, I'm likely to use this feature. So effectively, 6 people out of 100 were likely to use it. And we said, well, that data isn't enough compelling data for us to build this feature, so we're not going to build it. We wasted a total of about 3 hours making the fake, making the little report to give us the data, and putting it in production. 3 hours, and we got our information to say, don't build it. Experiment and learn rapidly. Also, make safety a prerequisite. Don't spend money when you don't have to. Don't build features that no one wants. Now, if I did this all the time in my product, people would hate the product, because they'd be like, oh, it's another one of those things where they're going to, you don't use this all the time. It's one of many different tools for carefully figuring out what needs to be built, what do people really want, and what should we not build at all. That's all I had. So thanks for staying, and I know I went a little bit beyond. Happy to take any questions. I know that we'll be moving on after this. Yeah. Also, don't forget, I have some stickers if you want one, and I have some Stop Work Authority cards as well. Do you want to give him the microphone?
Thank you. My question is quite practical. How much does it take? Well, as far as I understand, it's not just like firing all QAs and starting quality engineering, so it's some process. How much does it take, and how hurtful it was for the company? How does it affect the culture and all that stuff?
You know, if I understand your question, it's how long. So how long does it take to be fully modern agile? Is that what you're?
Actually, I was asking only about one part of it, making QA fully automated.
Yeah. So for QA, I mean, for Yahoo, that took about 2 years. Yeah, it's a big company, and it took about 2 years to fully convert QA to QE, as they call it now, quality engineering. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes. Okay, thank you very much.
Guys, we have a really important part of our conference.
Oh, pleasure.
It's closed.